You're tuned in to Reimagine 2021, version 11, the #1 virtual crypto and blockchain conference. Up next, our guest speakers talk about what excites them personally about DAOs.
What fascinates you about DAOs?
DAOs for me is basically it's a different way to organize and coordinate groups of people, and that to me is incredibly important. Whether it be the DAO that first started out, we saw sort of people come together, put in an incredible amount of money. I think it's at like that value would have been like 500 million or 600 million at this point. So an incredible amount of money to come together to sort of help the community. And I think now we're progressing to where there's an explosion of DAOs. We see so many different types of DAOs and communities with treasuries and organizing and coordinating. We see NFT DAOs, DeFi DAOs. Almost every large protocol is a DAO. So we really see the proliferation of DAOs really take hold.
Most people are used to FANG, right? Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, which is Web 2.0. Now we're coming into this Web 3.0 world where these traditional centralized institutions right now are extracting value from users. And now I feel like DAOs are giving users value back in governance tokens, in human capital, knowledge, social networking, and you're right. It is social scalability, human coordination. We're so used to validating blockchains. Do you think in governing blockchains, nodes, validators, miners, do you think we can govern ourselves in these DAOs?
I think that will be the challenge, right? The question will be, is it more effective to use a DAO in crypto than it is some other structure, like a traditional company? And I think we're seeing that it's more effective to have DAOs. Basically, it decentralizes power. It's a different thought process. So these people who are part of DAOs are learning an incredible skill set. And the successful ones, they're going to walk away from that, or they can move to another project and sort of spread their information of what they've learned and what works. And we're going to see pockets of innovation of, hey, I've learned this and we want to do it in this way, right? We should structure it in this way. And you're going to see what works and what doesn't work. And that's going to be iterated on to the point where they're very, very effective, in my opinion.
Can you sort of explain in layman's terms, like, why should people care about DAOs? How does it affect their daily life?
Well, I mean, like, it gives them a contribution, like in quantifying what they do, their immaterial labor. Like, it allows people, like, with any sort of, like, you don't need like a PhD or like an undergrad or whatever to come in and contribute to a DAO. If you got a good idea, and like ideas are like, everyone's got ideas, but like, it's hard for people to actually follow through on those. But if you just like, if you're like, okay, first of all, no education, or like you're just in high school or whatever, you can just come in and contribute and you can gain benefit instead of having to have all these like check marks, these ticks, like degree, like first world society, whatever, you want to do to be able to contribute to something. Anyone can come in and do it.
Been following DAOs for a long time, and just like any new kind of paradigm, there's some setbacks, and there's always been some growing pains, like in these types of things. But I think DAOs have evolved a lot. I think the most interesting thing about DAOs is the combination of both a governance structure where you actually have community-based voting. And then also the actual financial structure, right? So that community can actually, vote to allocate capital to certain projects. It can vote on people to run those projects. And kind of the combination of those types of things is really phenomenal in a fully decentralized way. I think there's kind of a misnomer that DAOs are like, yes, they're decentralized, but there's still people actively working on them, right? And they're groups of people, and that's what really a a corporation is just a group of people, it's some structure, and there's some centralization there. But if you kind of break it down into its disparate parts, that's really what a DAO is, without the formal kind of legal structure, right? And I think some of the downsides of DAOs, being people say, well, they're how are they enforced in courts and everything? But I think the interesting thing is, cryptography and cryptocurrencies particularly, they're kind of run by the laws of math, not necessarily what I like to say, the flaws of man. Where the legal structure doesn't always favor the person that's just or right. Maybe it's the person that has more money, right? And they can just keep them in litigation for a long time. Where DAOs kind of cut to the truth very quickly. So I think the legal system needs to kind of catch up to be able to figure out frameworks on how to participate in these types of structures. I think it's ironic that most lawyers are really bad at math, and here you have these structures that are based basically on math. So I've always said that I anticipate that law schools will start to have curriculum based on smart contracts, and how the legal system can actually incorporate smart contracts into their day-to-day operations. But I think DAOs are incredibly exciting. It's going to be a game changer, I think, for accessing, being able to access and lead projects and get funding. I mentioned before the Parity DAO, how they're using pools and fractionalization of NFTs to pool capital to go out and purchase NFTs, what I think is like incredible for increasing accessibility. So yeah.
Yeah, to me, DAOs are interesting, and it's actually kind of the reason why I got into the space as well. I mean, if you think about blockchain as a technology, the reason why I got into the space is like not only blockchain technology interesting from a technological perspective, but it's also has a huge impact on like human interactions with each other, and then also has a lot of impact on societal, economical, perspectives and frameworks, right? So I think DAOs are actually a good representation of that. Kind of think DAOs as like kind of a future form of organizations, and what it does in a sense is enables human coordination, right? If you think about anything right now, and like it's anywhere from like money to countries to government, companies, etc. If you think about everything, like the essence there is to basically organize a lot of these people to achieve a specific goal. If you boil it down into like what it's really trying to do as an organization. So to me, DAOs are interesting because it is trying to do that, but in a more efficient manner, basically. So that's why I think DAOs are actually pretty interesting.
I think the thing that fascinates me most about DAOs is it's the purest form of human collaboration, right? Fair human collaboration. When I think about DAOs, right, I always break it down into each of the three words, right? Organizations, we understand what organizations are, right? They are groups of people and assets and resources that are compiled together to achieve a certain goal, most often making profit for shareholders. Nonprofits have other goals, right? But these are organizations in themselves, right? What does it mean to have a decentralized organization, and what is an autonomous organization? It's important to think about what these words mean, right? Decentralized means there's no single owner of this, right? You can have certain weightings based on how much you contribute, but it's all contribution based, right? There's no head honcho from day one. It's all you get in what you get out what you put in, right? And that's in itself is a very, very powerful concept, right? The autonomous portion, I think about it more as all the rules are already written, right? There's no way to change the rules except by everyone agreeing to the change in rules, and that is where the fair aspect and open source, honestly, aspect of it comes into play, right? So if we have these organizations that are fair, trusted, and not owned by anybody, it really paints the picture for what life could look like down the road, right? To me, DAOs represent a really important evolution in how humans interact with each other, right? Before, we always have to ask permission of some central operator if we could do this or that, right? Now we have a system where the community of contributors will review what you've contributed and attribute value based on what they think independently, right? These independent thoughts that are aggregated, and that's the voice of the DAO, right? Across investments, across governance, across even running traditional enterprises using DAOs today, just getting started.
I'm incredibly excited about DAOs. I think they're going to be transformational, not just in our industry, but in every industry. So for us, my expectation is, first of all, at EY, we are participating in DAOs, we are contributing to DAOs, we are building DAOs for clients, and DAOs are going to become our clients. And in the process of doing this, honestly, they're going to break a lot of the standards and rules and experiences that us as a large enterprise have serving other private enterprises.
These DAOs actually give you value of being part of this community as opposed to them taking it from you.
Sure. Well, first of all, the tokenization of anything, right, means that we can create ownership structures that interoperate with this metaverse, right? Right. The metaverse meaning whether I'm interoperating with like Ready Player One type of model or with my actual surroundings when I get on the ferry and using my NFT ticket, right? I now have autonomous organizations that I can interoperate with in real time, right? And I can all I have to do is write code that enables that, right? And that's why software is ultimately ruling the world, because I can literally change legal structures that have been around for hundreds of years that don't actually help anymore in this new tokenized economy, and replace them with something that gives the power back to the people. That's what's so beautiful about the tokenization of everything, is it's a furtherization of this movement towards decentralized systems that puts the power back in the hands of people.
I mean, the concept behind DAOs is really fascinating. Until now, we had the ability for communities to form on Web 2.0, for instance, and share ideas and share content. But for the first time, those communities can now go and participate in building financial products, for example, right? And having a say and a vote in a really meaningful way on the direction of a company or a direction of a project. It could be even treasury management, it could be features to build, it could be really like detailed decision making where that model never existed before. And if you talk to a few of these community members, what I've realized at least is they feel so much more loyalty towards that product where they're involved in the DAO somehow than they feel to any other products and services that they've been using. And there's a reason for that, because they're never making a decision on or involved in a meaningful way in any of the services that they're interacting with or products they're interacting with. So it's a really powerful way to bring together a community across the world who believe in a common vision, who want to participate in building something together. And I feel like that is just a fascinating idea, and I'm super excited for the products and services and things to be coming out of that.
Well, okay. So as we know, like how big tech exists right now, shareholders, very centralized. It's usually like, there's the leaders, the board of directors, and the shareholders. It's very, the control of an organization, whatever you want to call it, is limited to the few, probably the privileged few too. So if you can get in into like an investment early, or you have the money to even to straight up buy shares, enough shares, of course, to have to make a difference, in governance and whatnot. It limits significantly participation from the general public. So DAOs enable communities to come together. Anyone can come in, and I like to use this term immaterial labor, quantifying what that is. So if they perform something that's value within this DAO, and then they can contribute to it, and they contribute to the governance and the guidance of where this DAO may go. So it's really just taking it from a very centralized, select, lucky few and opening it up to the general public. Super good for anyone, especially emerging markets too. It's anyone can participate in these things, and anyone can make their mark, quantify their immaterial labor, and and do it, and grow, become wealthy, become well known, whatever they want to do, whatever their goal may be.
DAOs are trying really hard to solve one of the oldest problems that we've ever had, which is human coordination. You can think about all the various different ways that we have tried to coordinate individuals historically, and doing that locally, I think we've cracked in some ways. You understand, if you're part of, a platoon, you have a hierarchy, you have a lieutenant, and then you have kind of how that flows down. But now try to do that remotely, And that's kind of the world that we live in now, where you're going to have people in New York City and Miami, and you're going to have them in Paris and Berlin, you're going to have them in San Francisco. And all of these teams need to coordinate. And they need to do it in a way that you don't have one single person leading the whole charge, but that everybody's intelligence and their minds and their enthusiasm is captured to be able to move that project forward. And that really is a fascinating challenge to pursue. And the reason is, we have seen several different times that when DAOs are able to capture the collective intelligence and the collective enthusiasm of their participants, they can outperform almost every other organizational structure. It's hard to capture them, don't get me wrong, it's very hard, but investment DAOs can outperform traditional investment mutual funds or groups. They've outperformed hedge funds. They are one of the most lucrative ways of participating in the crypto ecosystem. So we can use that, not just to make money through investments. I think that's a boring application of DAOs. What I think is an exciting application of DAOs is using that to out-innovate our traditional corporate overlords, for lack of a better term. Really be able to show that we're disrupting you, not just in the technology we're producing, not just in the products we're putting out to market, but also in just how we get things done. And I think that is incredibly interesting and fascinating.
DAOs, it's very cutting edge, I would say, new way to collaborate for collaborations, and maybe, very cool use case is just for fundraise as well, because you kind of fundraise and you have organization in place. So yeah, this is really interesting, experiments are going on, but everything is very new, everything is changing rapidly, so there is no straightforward path how to actually at least govern DAO properly, and even worse situation with legal part of things. So how to connect this DAO to legal world, and yeah, how to do this properly. It's also everything is changing every 6 months.
I think DAOs have the potential to be more inclusive than other types of organizations, but I want to emphasize that it's still at the stage of potential rather than reality. So the concept of DAOs is amazing, it is more transparent, it's more open, it allows for more inclusiveness. However, the reality of the blockchain community is we're still a relatively homogeneous group, we're a relatively kind of small organization that's not that particularly diverse, and we have another issue, which is that so far a lot of DAOs have fair and reasonable rules, but they're all different and they're all quite complicated. And one of the things that regulators have done that's actually really positive in the world of securities is they've standardized a lot of the ways in which we think about, compare, and report on information. And standardization and simplicity are good for inclusiveness. So I think if we can take some of the standardization that we've got in the world of securities, right, standard formats, standard reporting, standard disclosure rules, standard treatment of minority investors, and apply them to the world of DAOs, which is more inclusive, kind of opportunities, more openness, more transparency, then we will have a recipe for something that will be much more inclusive and really transformational. So I'm excited about the potential, but I'm not just going to assume that it's going to happen without a little bit of effort on our part to make sure they are truly inclusive.
And how does EY provide that? Going back to how you are getting involved with DAOs.
So we would like to see a world that is much more inclusive, right? One of the Chainlink hackathon that we were sponsoring and supporting was actually a big role of that was supporting women in blockchain. So when we say inclusive, we mean inclusive of minority shareholders, inclusive of less representative groups and organizations and people, and with fair, more transparent rules and vision. So I hope we're bringing some of our experience and some of our thinking about that in the rest of the world into the blockchain ecosystem and joining with lots of other people in the blockchain ecosystem who really want the same thing and the same good outcome.
Yeah, I think this is actually one of the areas in crypto I'm most excited by and I think are most promising. the ability to just like digitally have a neutral platform where people can decide on things together is really powerful. And then B, the level of experimentation that we can do with DAOs compared to like starting a country and then making a constitution is insane. And I'm very excited about the degree of experimentation we can see and where that can lead us as these communities, as we start building more with DAOs.
Now, do you think there's going to be interaction between a DAO and a DAO and traditional businesses all kind of interacting and doing business?
Sure, it's just software, right? So you can write contracts today for NFTs and DeFi that interoperate with each other, both running on Ethereum, right, which is the platform that this all runs on, right? Or you could have organizations written as DAOs with smart contracts that interoperate with each other, or DAOs that interoperate with NFTs and DeFi and any combination of that. Again, it's just software, right? And so we've just started to test with money that has no owner, like with this idea of MakerDAO, where you can do lending, right? All different types of organizations. I have a friend's company was just spun out. They decided to shut the company down over an 18-month time frame. Software is going to be open sourced, a token within the software that gives you certain rights, and the whole company is going to be turned into a DAO. It will live on forever because they realized that there was more value to extract in owning the tokens that provide the services to the people than in owning stock in a named company.
Yeah, so DAOs are actually why I got into blockchain. I started following Bitcoin, I think in 2011, and started actively getting involved and owning Bitcoin in 2013. And then when Ethereum launched, I was just captured by the ability to create new business models. Yeah. And the way you create new business models or democratize businesses are through smart contract-enabled structures that essentially act as a coordination tool and like a understood set of rules amongst many people for different use cases. And so for me, I was captured because of this concept of being able to do something that, one, is better for all the users, it's better for the world. Two, it's just technologically interesting. And three, something that actually does those two things and everybody can make money doing it. It's actually can be a positive net sum gain instead of needing to like a middleman extracting as much value as possible. It created this new dynamic that captured me, and so I've been incredibly fascinated with DAOs since 2017.
But what are some projects or use cases that you see that would be more effective coordinated through a DAO?
Oh, that's an excellent question. More effectively coordinated. So, I mean, the simplest one is the ones that people are doing already, but they just don't know it, which is anybody working in open source software is part of a DAO. Like anybody who's a bounty hunter who's going over to Gitcoin and going over to GitHub and tracking down these bounties to create new open source software and releasing it into the wild, and then they get paid on their work, they're basically working in a DAO. That's what it is. There's a little bit of tooling inside there that they're not taking advantage of, but that's what a DAO is. So that is an easy win, right? Open source software, everybody's a DAO. Some of the other things that are organized as DAOs, but we don't realize it yet, churches, one of them. Your Masons, your local Masons, your Rotary clubs, your Lions, all of those social clubs. They come together, they pool resources to do something. The thing about churches, which is really interesting, is not only do you come together, pool your resources, but you all share the common conviction, that common faith, that common belief, whatever it happens to be. That is core to how a DAO would work, ideally. And the thing that could be great about having a church become a DAO is the massive transparent accountability that church organization would have if they were organized as a DAO. So let's start making all churches DAOs. I think that's a great pitch.
What do you think are some of the competitive advantages that DAOs have over centralized organizations?
I think the main advantage is you now have this narrative that makes sense and aligns stakeholders effectively all across the board. When you have a corporation, the narrative from day one, at least traditional corporations, the rich get richer and the powerful get more powerful effectively. That's a narrative that has existed since the beginning of corporations. It's also been perpetuated even further, especially with the last couple of decades as kind of the financial industry, tech industry, and all these things started to take hold. So it's obviously worked for some time, maybe for a select few. And now if you flip it on its head, DAOs now could potentially work, maybe not for everybody, but for more people. And I think that's where it's stronger, because then you can really earn the hearts and minds of people much more quickly, as opposed to when you IPO and you're not even earning that many hearts and minds there, I think.
I mean, I'm not like an expert on this kind of stuff, but I'm pretty sure with like a centralized kind of entity, you have to assign like board members and people. There's like people in control, and then there's other people beneath it. I think DAOs function similar to like public companies, where you have like the board and the core members, and then you have like the majority shareholders. And then you have like the rest of the community who might have like smaller ownership, or like less amount of tokens, NFTs, et cetera, whatever the membership is. So I think those two are comparable, whereas like an LLC or like a sole proprietorship or like S Corp, C Corp, those kind of things, I don't know if there's like, if a DAO represents like the best substitution for those kinds of things, because a lot of those like maybe aren't shared ownership. But if you're trying to do something that's like collective, community-based, like a shared ownership project, almost like a cooperative. It's like an internet cooperative. I think then a DAO presents a great opportunity and like vehicle for that. But otherwise, you might want to go with like a regular entity.